My name is Aurora Shelton. I'm 39, and for most of my adult life, people have described me the same way. Steady. I'm the dependable one. The calm one, the woman who pays her bills on time, remembers every birthday, and keeps both feet planted on solid ground. For years, my husband, Brandon Shelton, 36, claimed my steadiness was comforting. Grounding, he used to call it. Apparently, grounding turned into boring somewhere along the way. It started about 8 months ago, quietly at first, subtle enough that I brushed it off. Brandon dove headfirst into what he called his wellness era. Not a normal, let me eat healthier phase, but a full-blown $500 a month supplement habit, an altar of crystals on the nightstand, and daily affirmations about rebalancing masculine energy. He insisted he felt blocked, misaligned, spiritually fatigued. I supported him the way any spouse would, with patience, with reassurance, with more eye rolls than he ever noticed. The center of this transformation was Sienna, 28, his personal trainer turned holistic oracle. She had a perfect Instagram face, sharp jawline, sun-kissed skin, and a collection of tribal-style tattoos that she claimed represented her past lives. She was the type who said things like, "Your aura is clouded and your inner warrior is trapped," while posting shirtless mirror selfies with captions about moon cycles. Brandon ate up every word. Suddenly, everything in our home was filtered through the lens of Sienna's wisdom. "Sienna says my macros are off," he would mutter while stirring protein sludge. "Sienna says your energy is too heavy in the mornings. Sienna thinks my root chakra is collapsing. And my personal favorite, Sienna, says you're holding on to stagnant energy, Aurora." According to Sienna, I was apparently a black hole of stagnation, destroying Brandon's journey to elevated masculinity. 3 months ago, he moved into the guest room. "I need space to let my warrior breathe," he told me, pulling his duvet dramatically as if preparing for battle. And, "Your snoring blocks my spiritual clarity. I'm not a monster. I didn't fight him. I just nodded." Though internally something cold and sharp slid into place. The house changed after that quieter, emptier wrong in the way a familiar song sounds when someone plays one sour note. His new life revolved around Sienna's whims, goddess retreats, sunrise, meditations, fasting cleanses. I worked, paid the bills, and tried to ignore the slow death of our marriage. Then 2 months ago, everything snapped into focus. My boss cut us loose early after landing a big contract. I got home at 3 p.m. The house was silent, but not my kind of silence. This one felt staged, like someone hit pause too late. It smelled different, too. Not our detergent, not our candles. It was sandalwood and pine, an expensive perfume I'd seen Sienna brandish proudly on social media, pretending it aligned her with the earth's core vibration. Brandon came downstairs in a silk robe, hair still damp, clutching the fabric like he'd been startled. "Aurora, you're home early." "Yeah. Big win at work. What's that smell?" He flushed, eyes darting. "Oh, Lisa dropped by. You know, testing new fragrances. Lisa smells like cigarettes and dollar store lavender," I thought, but I said nothing. Because in that moment, the steady part of me, the version Brandon always undervalued, shut down. A colder, far more calculating version stepped forward. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I didn't demand answers. I simply observed him the way you observe machinery malfunctioning. Quietly. Logically. Efficiently. I'm in project management. I track details for a living. I analyze patterns. I document everything. That weekend, while Brandon was off at a warrior rebirth retreat with Sienna, I upgraded our home security. I bought 3 high-definition nanny cams, tiny discreet video only, legal in my state. My house, my mortgage, my rules. One camera went inside the hideous metal sculpture Brandon insisted I buy last year, the one he claimed reflected cosmic duality. Another went on a shelf angled toward the kitchen island. The third watched the front door from inside the living room. I set them to record on motion, and I waited. It took one day. Monday. I got home from work. I checked the footage. Brandon arrived at 3 p.m. Sienna arrived at 3:12 p.m. At 3:14 p.m., they were nowhere near doing burpees. They were on my kitchen island. 10 minutes later, the couch. An hour later, shower. By 5:30, Brandon was fully dressed, making a smoothie, complaining about how drained he felt. I watched it in silence, not crying, not shaking, just absorbing. Then I backed up the footage to a secure drive. I did it again the next day, and the next, for 2 months, every morning, every afternoon, every ridiculous warrior spirit awakening session. I watched my marriage die in perfect unforgiving 1080p. For the next 2 months, my life split into two versions, the Aurora who lived in the house and the Aurora who watched it. One smiled politely at coworkers' cooked dinner and asked Brandon how his day was. The other sat alone at midnight, headphones off, eyes fixed on a glowing screen while her husband celebrated spiritual liberation on every flat surface we owned. Every day, the same routine played out. Brandon kissed my cheek in the morning light, distant, rehearsed, then left early for his alignment session. Sienna arrived shortly after I left for work or just before he got home. She didn't even pretend to stay in the living room anymore. They treated my home like some kind of unlicensed holistic spa/motel. There were moments in the footage burned permanently into my mind. Brandon lifting Sienna onto the island I saved up to renovate. Her laughing loud, genuine, carefree. The same laugh she used in her workout videos when she coached her followers to embrace wild feminine joy. Brandon toasting her with my good whiskey, the bottle he once said he was saving for a promotion that never came. The two of them clinking glasses while joking about new beginnings. If I had yelled or confronted him at the beginning, I might have felt something rage, heartbreak, betrayal. But watching it all unfold in silent clips and motion-triggered timestamps did something else to me entirely. It calcified me, like grief flash freezing instead of burning. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stopped being the version of Aurora he'd come to rely on, the soft one, the steady one. I became a strategist. The worse the footage got, the calmer I felt around him. Brandon would walk through the door after spending the afternoon with his spiritual muse, complaining dramatically about being emotionally exhausted, claiming he needed space, silence, cleansing teas, and detox baths. He would rub his shoulders as if burdened by ancient cosmic responsibilities. I would nod along like a supportive spouse, while every night I organized and backed up my growing library of evidence. 200 hours, then 250. By the end of month 2, I had just over 300 hours of their warrior awakening. Then came the evening he sat me down. He wore his sad but brave face, the one he practiced in the mirror whenever he needed sympathy. It was almost impressive how he could summon vulnerability, like flipping on a light switch. "Aurora," he said with a heavy sigh, "I can't live like this anymore." "Oh," I said, stirring my tea. "I'm suffocating. My soul is trapped. I've been trying to make this marriage work, but..." He paused dramatically. "I've found my inner warrior again, and she needs freedom." Sienna taught him to call his inner warrior she. I still don't know why. "What are you saying?" I asked softly. "I want a divorce. I'm moving in with my friend Jenna for now." I nodded once. "I understand." He blinked, confused. He expected a meltdown, screaming, begging, something cinematic. He clearly didn't know who he was dealing with anymore. "That's it," he snapped. "You're just okay with this." "You've made your decision," I said calmly. "I respect it. I'll contact a lawyer." "Good," he said sharply. "I've already hired mine." Of course he had. And of course that lawyer days later delivered a thick packet accusing me of emotional neglect, financial manipulation, and ongoing psychological distress inflicted upon my client, Brandon Shelton. He demanded temporary support, claiming Brandon was too traumatized to work. I laughed. I didn't mean to. It just slipped out sharp and involuntary. The sheer audacity of a man who spent months breaking in my kitchen island claiming that I emotionally destroyed him, it was too ridiculous to take seriously. I called my lawyer a colleague's recommendation. His name was Grant Rivera, and the first thing he said after reading the allegations was, "He's either delusional or suicidal trying this in court." "Grant," I said, "I've got a hard drive." 3 weeks later, Brandon shifted tactics. He tried desperation. It was a quiet Saturday morning. I was watching a rerun of an old crime documentary when there was abrupt pounding at the door. When I opened it, 2 police officers stood there, one older, tired-looking, the other a nervous rookie. And behind them on the sidewalk, Brandon stood clutching a handkerchief dramatically with Jenna beside him, rubbing his back like a stage mom coaching a child actor. "Ma'am, Officer Daniels said we received a call. Your husband claims you locked him out of the residence and are withholding his personal property." I almost laughed again. "Officers, Brandon moved out 3 weeks ago of his own free will." "That's a lie," Brandon shrieked. "She threw me out. She has my mother's jewelry inside. She's tormenting me. Tormenting him, the irony could have crushed me. Officers, I said calmly, if you'd like, I can show you the Ring doorbell footage of him and Jenna moving his belongings to her car, including the blue jewelry box he's referring to. Officer Daniels looked at Brandon with a face that said, I'm too old for this. He approached Brandon, spoke quietly, then returned to me. Ma'am, this is a civil matter. He shouldn't call 911 for it. I nodded politely. The officers left. Brandon glared with watery outrage. But this was just the beginning. Next came the property retrieval. Through lawyers, he demanded access to collect remaining items. I agreed. Supervised, scheduled, recorded. He showed up with Sienna. The audacity should have stunned me. It didn't. Just get your things, I told him without even sparing her a glance. Brandon wandered through the house, listing off items dramatically. Then he pointed at the ugly metal sculpture, the one hiding a nanny cam. Aurora, this is mine. You bought it for me. It represents his healing journey. Sienna added, voice dripping with faux spirituality. If they only knew. Take it, I said with genuine warmth. You should absolutely have it. Brandon frowned, unaccustomed to getting what he wanted so easily. But greed beat suspicion. He hauled the stupid thing out the door like it was the Holy Grail. I didn't tell him the camera inside was long gone. The stage was set. He had no idea, and that was the best part. By the time Brandon finished dragging his healing sculpture into Jenna's car, I had already planned every step of what came next. My lawyer Grant said it with almost admiring disbelief. He walked out with the shell of the camera you already emptied. Aurora, you might be the calmest tactician I've ever met. Maybe I was. Or maybe betrayal just does something to a woman like me. Someone who built her entire adult life around steadiness. When steadiness breaks, something sharper replaces it. Brandon, meanwhile, strutted through the world like the universe owed him compensation for his suffering. His lawyer, a thin, gray little man named Mr. Finch, filed demands that would have made a sane person burst into flames from embarrassment. Temporary alimony, $10,000 per month. Immediate lump sum, $20,000. For therapy, relocation, and emotional rehabilitation. Justification. Severe psychological distress inflicted by Aurora Shelton. The absurdity almost made me choke on my coffee when I first read the list. But Grant only smiled. Let him keep digging. Every accusation he adds now just makes the eventual reveal more catastrophic for him. I kept playing my role perfectly. Reserved, cooperative, unthreatening. Brandon interpreted my silence as defeat, as if I were a fragile, trembling woman he had finally broken. Little did he know he was doing my work for me, setting the stage where I would later bury him with his own lies. Our first mediation session was where the real performance began. It was me, Brandon, Mr. Finch, and Grant. Brandon arrived, wearing an oversized beige sweater strategically chosen so he'd look small and emotionally withered. His posture was slumped, his voice weak as if speaking required monumental effort. My client Finch has endured unbearable emotional trauma. Mrs. Shelton created an environment of ice-cold detachment, manipulation, and marital sabotage. Brandon has been unable to work due to debilitating anxiety, documented anxiety, and is now in therapy to cope with the psychological toll. Brandon dabbed under his eye. There were no tears, not even moisture. He was wiping dry skin. We are requesting $10,000 per month in temporary support. Finch continued with theatrical solemnity. This is the minimum amount required to facilitate Brandon's healing journey. Brandon looked directly at me, then, eyes narrowed, with righteous indignation. I deserve it, he said softly. I deserve $10,000 a month for my emotional anguish. There was a brief suspended silence. Then Grant leaned slightly toward me, a single subtle nod. My turn. I smiled warmly at Brandon. You're right, I said. That's fair. His face lit up with the victorious glow so smug it could have powered a small city. Finch cocked his head like a confused pigeon. Grant checked his watch, already bored. So Brandon said, gloating, We're in agreement. Grant stood. We are absolutely in agreement on one thing. Finch blinked, which is that this mediation has failed, Grant replied calmly. We reject your proposal. We'll see you at the temporary support hearing. Brandon's expression collapsed into confusion, then panic, then rage. You agreed, he sputtered. No, Grant said, adjusting his tie. My client said you deserve it. She didn't say she'd pay it. The look on Brandon's face could have been framed. We left the room. Behind us, Finch whispered furiously at Brandon, undoubtedly asking why the hell his client failed to mention anything important like maybe his extracurricular activities with his personal trainer. On the elevator ride down, Grant chuckled. By the way, is it true he took that sculpture with him? Oh, yes, I said. He believes it's sacred. Grant's laughter was sharp delighted. I hope he places it right in his living room. The judge is going to love every inch of this. But the universe wasn't done serving appetizers yet. Brandon kept trying to poke at me, desperate for a reaction. 2 days after mediation, he texted, "You're heartless. You ruined this marriage. But don't worry, I'll win in court. People believe me. I'm the victim here." I didn't reply. Later that week, Jenna messaged me privately to apologize. Apparently, Brandon and Sienna had been using Jenna's house like a free Airbnb. Jenna had no idea. The moment she saw the truth, she kicked both of them out. And she wasn't subtle about calling Brandon a cosmically delusional parasite. But absolutely nothing beat what happened the night before the hearing. Brandon posted on social media, "Healing is a journey, and the universe sees my truth. Tomorrow, justice will prevail." #warrior energy. Sienna commented with a fire emoji and a moon emoji. I saved the post, every detail, every timestamp, every lie, because tomorrow wouldn't be his victory. It would be his execution. The morning of the temporary support hearing, Brandon arrived dressed like a wounded poet. Soft gray sweater, sleeves pushed up, just enough to show a hint of Sienna's empowering crystal bracelet. His hair was mussed intentionally, the kind of messiness that takes effort. He clutched a leather notebook like it contained his trauma in handwritten form. When he saw me, he gave a small tragic nod. A performance. "Aurora," he murmured, "I hope today brings clarity and healing." I almost laughed, but I kept my expression calm, neutral, exactly the way Grant instructed. "Let him think he's winning," he said. "The fall will be so much harder." We entered courtroom 4B. Judge Harriet Rowe, 60s steel gray hair, and an expression that said she'd heard every lie 200 times already, presided with the kind of quiet authority that made people sit straighter. She skimmed the case file with visible skepticism. Finch opened theatrically. "Your Honor, my client, Brandon Shelton, has endured relentless emotional cruelty. Mrs. Shelton's neglect left him psychologically battered, financially controlled, and spiritually crushed. He has been unable to work. He suffers anxiety attacks, weight loss, depression." Judge Rowe glanced at Brandon, who looked quite well fed, bronzed, and hydrated, but she let him continue. "We request temporary spousal support of $10,000 a month, plus immediate funds to cover therapy and relocation." "Mr. Finch," Judge Rowe said dryly, "this is a temporary hearing, not a screenplay. Get to the testimony." Finch swallowed his ego and called Brandon to the stand. Brandon stepped up, exhaled shakily, and began weaving the same melodramatic narrative he'd rehearsed in mediation, how I forced him into emotional isolation, how his spirit eroded under my oppressive calmness, how he lived in constant fear of my coldness. He added extra quivers to his voice, pausing dramatically at all the wrong times. "And this emotional distress," Finch prompted softly, "how has it affected your daily life?" Brandon looked down, voice trembling. "It broke me. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I felt unsafe, trapped." Grant leaned toward me and whispered, "He's overacting. Judges hate overacting." And it showed Judge Rowe's face tightened with impatience. Finch ended with the grand finale. "Brandon, how much support do you believe you need each month to recover? My healing journey requires space and stability and $10,000 a month." He said it like he was asking for a cup of sugar. Finch sat proudly, as if he'd just delivered a Tony-winning performance. Brandon looked relieved, wiping non-existent tears. Judge Rowe turned to Grant. "Counsel, your response." Grant stood slowly, pulling out the sleek black hard drive like he was unsheathing a weapon. "Your Honor, we appreciate the emotional depth of Mr. Shelton's testimony. However, it is in its entirety a fabrication." "Objection," Finch barked. "Sustained," Judge Rowe snapped. "Stick to evidence, Mr. Rivera." "My point is simple, Your Honor." Grant continued. "Mr. Shelton claims he was a prisoner of emotional despair during the period in question. We have evidence that directly contradicts every word he just stated." He placed the hard drive on the table with deliberate calm. "This drive contains over 300 hours of video-only security footage recorded legally in the common areas of the Shelton residence. The footage corresponds exactly to the dates Mr. Shelton claims he was suffering debilitating emotional distress." Brandon froze. Finch's face drained of color. "Your Honor," Finch sputtered, "this is Illegal surveillance. Abuse intrusion. Judge Rowe cut him off. In this state, video without audio is legal in shared spaces of one's own residence, unless Mr. Shelton wants to claim he had a reasonable expectation of privacy on a kitchen counter. The courtroom went dead silent. Brandon's mouth hung open. His soul practically left his body. Grant continued, "We've prepared a brief 5-minute compilation for the court." Judge Rowe exhaled, pinched the bridge of her nose, then said, "Fine. The courtroom will be sealed. Bailiff, clear the gallery." Everyone was removed except essential staff. Grant plugged the drive into the AV system. The first clip appeared on the monitors, Brandon and Sienna in the kitchen. She was in a sports bra laughing while he lifted her onto the island. The timestamp the day after he claimed I'd verbally abused him over a bill. Judge Rowe's eyebrows shot upward. Next clip, Brandon and Sienna on the couch, eating leftovers with their hands, feeding each other, certainly not looking distressed. Next clip, Sienna arriving at the front door. Brandon sprinting down the stairs like an excited teenager, lifting her, spinning her, kissing her. Timestamp the day he told her he was too depressed to get out of bed. Clip after clip, moment after moment. Every one of his lies dissolving in crisp, damning silence. Grant paused the video. "Your Honor, we can provide the full 300 hours upon request." Brandon looked like he might be sick. Sienna wasn't there, but I imagine she'd be posting moon emojis a lot less enthusiastically after this. Judge Rowe leaned back, removed her glasses, and rubbed her jaw. "Mr. Shelton," she said slowly, "do you understand what perjury is?" Brandon swallowed. "Aye, Your Honor. I was emotionally manipulated." "By whom? The woman in the video feeding you lasagna with her hands." Finch buried his face in his folder. The judge let out a short, incredulous laugh. "This is one of the most egregious cases of false testimony I've seen in years." Brandon's shoulders collapsed inward. "Motion for temporary alimony is denied with prejudice," she declared. "Additionally, I am ordering Mr. Shelton to pay Mrs. Shelton's legal fees for this hearing. This filing was a bad faith attempt to mislead the court." Brandon bolted upright. You can't do this. She spied on me. She destroyed my healing." "Bailiff, escort him out," Judge Rowe said. As he was dragged out, Brandon shouted, "You ruined me, Aurora. You did this." I didn't respond. I didn't even look at him. Because for the first time in months, I felt something warm in my chest. Not triumph, not relief. Just the quiet clarity of truth finally breaking through. The hearing ended Brandon's case so decisively, it was almost anticlimactic. Perjury, bad faith filing, zero support, full legal fees. The judge's gavel wasn't just a decision, it was an execution of every lie he tried to weaponize against me. But the real dismantling happened in the weeks that followed. Because once a person is exposed so publicly, gravity takes over. Everything they built on lies collapses under its own weight. The divorce proceedings, which Brandon confidently predicted would go in his favor, became a one-sided dissection of his failures, conducted under the cold fluorescent lights of legal procedure. His credibility was shot. His accusations evaporated. His lawyer, Mr. Finch, negotiated with the enthusiasm of a man walking into his own funeral. The house had to be sold marital property, but due to Brandon's perjury and the judge's written opinion about his intent to mislead and manipulate the court, I was awarded 70% of the equity. His lawyers fought for 35%. The judge gave him 30%. Finch looked like he was trying not to vomit. I almost thanked him for his effort. Almost. Brandon didn't take the outcome graciously. He sent me 3 long, ranting texts about how I never supported his spiritual journey and how Sienna had helped him ascend emotionally beyond my frequency. Then in the next breath, he asked if we could discuss reconciliation for the sake of mutual healing. I didn't reply, not once. Word travels fast through mutual acquaintances, especially when one party is loudly seeking sympathy. Someone mentioned seeing Brandon and Sienna together less and less. Apparently, when Brandon's finances deflated, so did Sienna's enthusiasm for cosmic alignment. The final blow seems to have come after she realized she was dating a man who was not only broke, but also publicly humiliated in court. A week later, Jenna reached out. Her message, I kicked them both out. Brandon's been lying to everyone about everything. I'm sorry you had to deal with him. I didn't rub anything in. I didn't need to. Brandon moved back into his childhood bedroom in his parents' house. His mother posted an inspirational Facebook quote about welcoming fallen angels back home. The irony was almost poetic. He took the sculpture with him, the same ugly $1,200 chunk of metal that once housed the camera. I imagined it sitting across from his twin-size bed, reflecting the glow of whatever cheap lamp he'd plugged in, silently mocking him every morning. Sometimes justice is subtle. My life, by comparison, unfolded like a breath I'd been holding for years. When the financial dust settled, I bought a modern condo downtown with tall windows, soft lighting, and a view of the river. Quiet, clean, predictable. It still felt strange at first. Freedom always does, like stepping onto solid ground after months at sea. The first night I slept there, something hit me hard, and without warning, silence. Not the heavy, oppressive silence of my old house filled with suspicion and the ghost of a failing marriage, but real silence. Peaceful. Empty in the best possible way. I'd been so steady for so long, so reliable, so calm that even my anger froze into strategy instead of chaos. But now in this new space, I finally let myself feel something I hadn't allowed in months, maybe years. Relief. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the hardwood floor in a warm stripe, and I realized something simple and enormous. I was free. Not because Brandon was gone. Not because I'd won, but because I finally understood that steadiness wasn't a flaw. It wasn't boring or stagnant or unspiritual. It was strength. I thought back to the exact moment everything shifted. Not the footage, not the lies, not even the courtroom. It was the moment Brandon said, "I found my inner warrior," and she